Hi, Tom Lydon here in Hollywood, Florida at the Inside ETF conference. I'm here with Deborah Fuhr, who's managing partner and founder of ETFGI. Great seeing you, Debbie.
Nice to see you.
Well, another great conference. I know you were busy. Everybody's trying to grab time with you because you are the premier owner of data of everything that's going on in the world ETF. So with that, tell us a little bit of some of the themes and trends you're seeing in the marketplace.
Well, I think one of the important things is this month, the end of January, marked 60 months of consecutive net inflows into ETFs. That's 5 years. Most people don't know that, right? So I think we're seeing that there's more institutions, nearly 5,000 institutions now are using ETFs around the world. And so what you find is when anyone tries and starts to use ETFs, the number of ETFs they use, the amount they use, and how they use them grows. And so we're seeing that the adoption is growing across institutions, financial advisors, and then retail. So it's the only democratic product, and that message is getting out there. I mean, events like this help, things like you do with webinars, etc. So I think people are learning and trying.
It was crazy, even with the fourth quarter of 18, huge down moves in the market, we still had positive contributions to the ETF markets where money continued to flow out of mutual funds.
Yeah, and so what you are finding, I think the nice thing is, and it's important, right? ETF is not an asset class.
Yeah.
ETF is a wrapper, it's a mutual fund with added benefits, right? You can trade them when you want to, small size, do it whatever you want, however you want. And so what you find is people are moving from equities to fixed income. So the most recent thing is a lot of people are going to short-term fixed income. We're also seeing some money going back into gold, a little bit away from equities. But if you look within the flows, Europe is still positive, which is funny given I live in London, and we don't know what Brexit is, except they keep seeing Brexit means Brexit, which who knows what that really means. But I think people are concerned about trade wars, they're concerned about, where's interest rates going to go, what are the tea leaves saying. But what you are finding is regardless of where you want to go, some people will be holding more money in cash, but when they are allocating, increasingly people are finding it's hard to find active funds or hedge funds that consistently deliver alpha. They use ETFs for index exposure to generate alpha through asset allocation. So it's not passive, it's index, and index can be used to generate alpha.
So let's get back to that, because of the top 100 ETFs, which are pretty much all pure legacy indexes, cap weighted, that makes up a big chunk of the ETF assets, especially here in the US.
Exactly.
But talk about smart beta, talk about factor, talk about multi-factor. Are we starting to see more movement over to that area?
Yes, I think many people, so people like thematic because it's hard to identify, as an example, who is good in 3D printing or genomics or whatever. So I think ETFs, because of the transparency, help people to understand how do I invest in and identify trends, right? If I believe in something, how do I do it? So ETFs are good for that. I think smart beta is also something that, especially when you think about dividends, high dividends, people don't see it as smart beta, but that's one of the components, and people want income. So we've seen money going there. I think that people who like what some of the issuers are doing in multi-factor find being able to do it through smart beta ETFs is appealing. ESG is an interesting one, right? Because most people think that ESG means don't invest in tobacco, firearms, pornography. So get rid of sin, buy the non-sin. ESG has really moved on because what you found was when the methodology was that, you were giving up performance to do good. The way ESG indices are created today is really different. So they're looking at how well do companies do on environmental factors, social, governance, etc. Companies that are diversified, that do better on all these things, perform better. So it's not necessarily that you're doing good to give up, right? And there's different types. I mean, people believe in diversity, LGBT, solar, whatever. So there's different types, and that goes into kind of thematics.
It's all about choice.
But the interesting thing is, Europe is ahead of the game. So globally right now we have $5.1 trillion in ETFs. In ESG, there's like 23 billion, which isn't huge, but 12 of it comes out of Europe. And 9 comes from the US.
They're kind of putting us to shame.
Exactly. But it's partially because regulators are forcing us to do it.
Right. Okay, coming back full circle when we talk about the flows, I've got a question and just an opinion from you. Do you think we're seeing behavioral bifurcation between ETF investors and mutual fund investors? Because ETF investors, like mutual fund investors, were really tested in the fourth quarter, but they hung tough where a lot of mutual fund investors bailed.
So I think that it's important to remember ETFs are funds
Yes.
with added benefits, right?
Right.
So, everything they do is already highly regulated.
Yeah.
I think what you're finding is it's people finding that it's hard to get alpha from those funds, right?
Right.
And so it's easier to find ETFs. You can see what's inside of it, you can see what they do. And I think we benefit in the industry from the press writes about new ETFs coming to market.
Yeah.
So I think the awareness of ETFs is growing. Especially as in the US, people are doing their own work or using robos. So I think the robos help people to learn about ETFs, to learn about asset allocation, whereas for mutual funds, you tend to find that the mutual fund salesperson is like selling the new mutual fund and then they move on to something else.
Right.
Whereas we've been selling some of the early products are still the biggest and most actively traded. So
We could go on
our stories
forever.
are good.
I
I can.
know. This is great. Debbie, as always, great seeing you. Thank you.